Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carter Walker. I love talking about movies, music, comics, and games. I saw Totally Killer, the new Amazon Prime slasher movie last week. This movie has been something I've been looking forward to for the last 2 weeks because the trailer premiered, and then I saw the Fantastic Fest reviews, and I got really excited, really looking forward to it, and unfortunately, it did not quite meet my expectations. It's not terrible, but I don't think it's fantastic either. But Totally Killer is a movie about a young girl who lives in a town where murders took place back in 1987. And her mom was around the original murders, and in the present time, something happens with the killer and her family, and she decides to go back. Well, she doesn't decide. She accidentally goes back in time to 1987 to see if she can try and save those people who got murdered that night and try and alter the future. And this is obviously very heavily inspired by Back to the Future, which is one of my favorite movies. I have a Back to the Future poster right there. I have it's downstairs. I have the Lego DeLorean downstairs on our entertainment system, much to my wife's dismay. I think Back to the Future is a perfect movie, perfectly written, so much fun, so much adventure. And then you combine that with something like Scream. Now, in my YouTube Shorts review, I said it was very heavily inspired by Scream, which I still stand by. It's a whodunit slasher, which Scream very much popularized this type with the meta humor, with the reliance on comedy, but still having, those kills, those brutal kills that add up, eventually leading to the reveal in the final count, the killer being someone you know. Of course, a whodunit in a slasher isn't a novel concept that Scream invented, but it definitely popularized it within the genre, especially, like I said, with those meta aspects. And Totally Killer definitely is meta. It has a lot of meta jokes. It has a lot of jokes about time travel movies, jokes about understanding time travel, comments about it, etc., etc., etc. And the movie is very heavily inspired by Back to the Future and Scream. It wears the influences of those movies on its sleeve. I don't think that's bad, honestly. Just like with The Creator a few weeks ago, I don't think a movie being inspired and wearing its inspirations and influences on the movie's sleeve is necessarily bad or wrong, as long as it's done in a way that's not very derivative. And in my opinion, Totally Killer was kind of in the middle. It was a little derivative, but more often than not, it blended those two concepts together for a really fun idea. And much to my disappointment, it didn't quite live up to that idea. In my opinion, it honestly kind of fell short of those. I think my expectations were too high because Back to the Future and Scream, literally two of my favorite movies of all time. I don't think you can get any better than those movies as far as script goes. I've seen a lot of people really like this movie, so I fully accept that the opinion that I have is in the minority. However, I just didn't feel like it was anything spectacular. I thought it was like a solid 3.5 star movie. The positives, I thought the acting was great. I thought the writing was pretty clever, and some of the jokes were very, very funny. I enjoyed the dynamic that all the cast has. They have a very fun dynamic. It's a very comedy-heavy dynamic. There's not a lot of emotion there, unless it's between the protagonist and her mother. That's really the basis of the emotion in this movie. The novelty of her being in the past kind of wears off around the midpoint of the movie for me, and I was waiting for it to do something super clever, something super cool, very inventive, and it never really got around to it. It didn't quite have the bite that I was hoping for. It didn't quite have the comedy influence that I was hoping for, and it kind of just felt like it, instead of shooting one direction or going really hard with either the comedy or the violence or the kills, it kind of just stayed in the middle and tried to navigate all of them. In my opinion, it didn't quite navigate them as well as I was hoping. I believe that this is a case where I think I might be letting my expectations get the best of me. I am pretty confident that if I watched this movie with little to no expectations somewhere down the line, I might end up really liking it. But right now, I do have a few complaints, so let's get into those. Heading into the mix, I just feel like the main idea wasn't compelling enough. And I know that sounds contradictory because of what I said earlier, but you have such a great idea of mixing Back to the Future and Scream, and you could really go all out, and they just don't. I think that's my biggest complaint, is every time I was like, they're gonna do this, they could do that, there's this direction that they could go in, they could have this cast member show up right here, this thing could change in the future because of this thing in the past, and they just don't do that. They set up things like that, but they just never really deliver, and the whole movie felt a little undercooked for me, to where it had some really clever ideas, but the execution of it overall wasn't as clever as I was hoping it would be, so that left me a little disappointed. And my big negative here is that the reveal and like the final act really wasn't that satisfying for me. I really didn't enjoy the final maybe 20 minutes of this movie, and the reveal, once there's a few steps taken in the reveal. I'm trying not to spoil this because it's a whodunit slasher. The reveal is a very big part of what's going on in the movie. And I think that part of the reveal is just so painfully obvious that you pick it up on first watch. I picked it up immediately. I hate being like, oh, I guessed it first time, but I did. I kind of guessed it. I was like, oh, that's the killer. And I was right. And that was kind of a bummer. But then there's another part of the reveal that's just so out of left field, and it's not set up at all, that it could work, but it's just not expanded upon. It's like, oh, that happened. And then that's over. And then now we're done. And I was like, oh, that's weird. So I was really kind of underwhelmed by this movie just because of the final 20 minutes. I do think that there is a gem of a movie somewhere, and again, it might just be my own personal bias, my own hubris clouding my judgment here, but in my opinion, I just didn't enjoy this movie as much as I would have liked to. The journey is definitely more fun than the destination here. I think that the reveal and the final 20 minutes are very, very disappointing, and that kind of tanked my enjoyment of the movie overall. However, there's a lot to like here. If you're a fan of Back to the Future or Scream or horror movies, I'm sure you will love this movie because a lot of people are really raving about it. But for me, the combined pieces didn't quite make up the perfect whole like everyone else was saying. And so unfortunately for me, Totally Killer is going to be like a 6.5 out of 10. It was a movie that I watched, I was really excited for, and it's part of my horror binge where I'm doing a horror movie every day in October, or at least I'm trying to every day. There's gonna be a few days where I don't think I'll be able to fit a movie in, just where I have some plans with friends, bachelor parties, stuff like that. So I'm trying to watch like supplementary movies, like, okay, if I can watch half of Friday the 13th today, half of Friday the 13th tomorrow, that can be a movie for later on, stuff like that, where I'm hoping I can make it up to at least 31, if not a little bit more, and I can sit down to a big ranking at the end of the month, beginning of next month, and just be really excited. I have a lot of videos planned in the pipeline, and I've been getting a lot of really positive responses, so thank you so much for that. Anyways, this video was way longer than I anticipated it, but as always, guys, I'm Carter, and thank you for watching. Comment down below what you thought about Totally Killer. Am I wrong? Am I crazy? Am I nuts? Let me know, and as always, have a great rest of your day.